Okay, so good afternoon, Paul. How are you, sir?
Just fine, Don. Yourself?
I'm doing good. I was going to ask everybody, and I'll ask the other guys when they come on, what you thought of, well, did you watch it, and what did you think of the debate?
Well, I did watch it. I screwed up my courage and strapped myself into the seat so I wouldn't get up and leave. And no, I was talking to somebody this morning about that, and the consensus, at least my consensus, was that JD did a great job. He answered the questions and then carried the football for President Trump.
Yeah,
You know, right down the across the yard lines, and Walz looked like a deer in the headlights most of the night, as far as I could tell. He they would ask him a question and he'd do a Kamala, left field answer that was a great answer, just didn't go with the question, that sort of
yeah,
thing.
right.
And, but Vance did a good job. He really did a good closing. I really appreciated his closing.
Yeah, I watched snippets last night, kind of back and forth. I was switching to it, and I thought he was spectacular,
Yeah.
and his introduction was just tremendous, where he waltzed right away. First thing waltzed out of his mouth was he started criticizing Trump, and then JD, the first thing out of his mouth is he told the people who he was, where he came from, how he grew up, and then he got into answering the question about. There's Jeff coming in, answering the question about the first question out of the box. So it was very good. Hello, Mr. Jeff.
Sorry about that, guys. I got a new computer yesterday,
Ooh,
and
cool.
yeah,
Thanks.
my
We're
so
excited.
yeah. Well, got to keep in business when the other one stops working, but we're just getting up and running with it.
Did you have
So
did you have it all backed up or
I did.
good?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
back up every single day.
yeah,
So
that's
the
good.
computer guy came in. It took him about 3 hours, but we got everything. I think I have everything going. But the first Zoom meeting, it had to reinstall and all that. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good.
there we
Good to
go.
see it.
So,
Yeah,
all right.
we led off with talking about the debate last night, and
All right. Well, lots to talk.
yeah, so it's our consensus, our opinions, Jeff, that Paul and I, that JD pretty much dominated the debate. Um, the other question about it is, what I want to ask you guys is, do you think Waltz hurt himself, helped himself with independence? I think he kind of hurt himself.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Paul, you want to go and then I'll go because
Well, no,
I
I was just going to say, I don't know that a vice presidential debate sways a lot of presidential voters.
Yeah,
I mean, a VP debate could hurt a presidential candidate if it came off so atrociously bad that you'd say, I can't vote for Tom because Smith is so crazy. But they voted for Biden, and look what they got for a vice president. So,
yeah,
even like I said, I just don't think the VP debate is a big swinger for independents or anybody. Democrats already have decided that they're going to vote for Kamala because they can't stand the idea of Trump presidency, and then the people in Washington are pushing Trump out as best they can because they all know what's going to happen to him if he gets in there and we get an honest Department of Justice. So they're scared to death. That's why there's been 2 assassination attempts, as far as I can tell. So I don't think it made a big swing of independence. Would be my response to that.
Paul, for some of the people I know that are sitting on the fence, it was a big deal to them. And I'll tell you why. Because some of my Republican never Trumper friends, yes, I still have them, but who I'm constantly trying to convince, you don't want to vote for Kamala just because it's going to be, unbelievably terrible. And she does lean towards Marxism. There's no question about it, where there's talk of equity and unilateral executive decisions and orders. But so I do think in this debate it matters because people want to see, at least those I'm talking to on the fence, who's behind Kamala. Okay, if she gets in trouble, who's next in line, and is there somebody reasonable that can straighten her out? And so that's number one, to decide if they wanted to vote for Kamala over Trump. But number two is, are you going to have an independent thinker behind Trump? You're going to have somebody that's rational, not weird as the left tries to portray him, can think on his own. And I do think, and I agree with both of you guys, although I missed it, that I think he did exceptional if certain things were his goal. There were certain areas I was disappointed, but if certain things were his goal, then I think he did a great job. I think he definitely, if it was just strictly a debate where we weren't worried about, a certain constituency and pulling them over to vote Republican, if he wasn't just focused on that, which I think he was, but if he wasn't focused on that, I think he could have done a lot better at just debating, because he left a lot on the table with abortion, with firearms, with, the voting, with foreign policy.
Right.
But again, what's that?
No, I said right. I was thinking last night, right after the debate. I watched snippets of it, Jeff. So, but
I watched the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I've pretty much caught everything this morning, but
yeah,
and that's good. I think it was worth watching because, to me, it was a huge contrast. But one thing that didn't come up that I was surprised, these two CBS. I guess I'll use the
moderators.
Women. Yeah, moderators. What they didn't bring up was the Ukraine. They didn't.
Right. Well,
that didn't come up at all.
No, they kept wanting to get to other topics, and a couple times they did shut down Vance.
Turned his mic on.
Yeah, because I think he was going to have Walz on the ropes. But I do think the debate. What I liked about the debate was it really was a modern day example of how you can disagree vehemently over certain policies, but have a nice discussion.
Yeah.
And even though both of them said, "Oh, I agree with this and this," there were certainly differences of opinions on different policies and opinions. And I think the American people really needed to see that. So if J.D. Vance's goal was not to throw the red meat to the MAGA crowd, and not to totally tick off all the, Harris Walz supporters, but to strictly focus on the middle ground, reachable voters, then I think he did an excellent job and probably couldn't have done better, except for a couple comments. I think he could have, but if his goal was to just, I think he left some room on the table for showing what a dismal position the Democrats have in a lot of different areas, including Israel, Ukraine, abortion, gun policies. And so I don't know if he hasn't thought all those through, which would surprise me because he's very sharp, or he was just, it was very evident the guy's at the top of his game, if his goal was as I stated.
Yeah, well, I think CBS kind of, the questions they asked were going to lead to the topics were discussed and the answers that were given. So, and I don't know, obviously they were biased because they felt the need to fact check JD and he didn't appreciate it. So,
well, one of the things I thought again could have been answered better. Again, I think JD's playing to the middle is on climate change.
Yeah.
I think he could have done better there, the abortion issue, but it's so interesting how the moderators at the very end of the climate change debate had to throw in the super majority of scientists, say, and that climate change, is man-made and all this, and I would have said, how many experts signed off on the Hunter Biden laptop and the Russia collusion? Why they treat the audience like they're morons, okay? And they have to steer the argument. And that was a blatant interjection of them or their own biases, and it has no place in there. It just is infuriating.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say half their audience probably was idiots.
Yeah.
What was that, Paul?
I said probably half their audience was idiots.
Well, yeah, well,
That's what they were singing to.
yeah, but look, if you really, if you study climate change, and you look, there's a lot on the left that call it the number one existential threat to the world today. That is a total falsehood.
Yeah.
And I think if you look, I do not believe that humans have the greatest influence on climate change.
Exactly.
We have some, but if you look at, the geologists and the people I follow, CO2 is at most 3% of the makeup of the atmosphere, and the amount of man-made CO2 in that atmosphere is about 10% of that. And so is the tail wagging the dog? I don't think so. But let's say we do have some influence on that. Even if we have some influence, how much is it? And is it our greatest existential threat, where we should be focusing 90% of our, a focus on energy production and usage?
Yeah.
That would definitely 100% hurt the poor people today, not only in our own country, but throughout the world.
Oh, yeah.
So it is asinine in the way they spin it. And I just kind of wish there was, a better way to handle that. But at the same time, I know he was threading the needle and didn't want to get into these, because it's a difficult, somebody said, if you're explaining, you're losing,
Yeah.
if you have to get into the weeds like that. But that's because the majority of people worldwide are, I believe, ignorant to the climate change issue, just like they were COVID.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just kind of believe what the experts say,
Yeah.
and they do no research in and of themselves.
And the largest polluters aren't doing anything anyway, right?
No, I mean, even if we went to zero, what does
Right.
China do? What does India do? I mean, they dwarf us as far as emissions output.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't, it's, but you and I were, and I'm not going to discount Paul's opinion, but you and I have a little bit of engineering background, and it's easier for us to kind of maybe dig out some of the things that are fact, not to mention the biblical side of this, where, do we really think humans can cause climate change? I mean, seriously, do we think humans can affect climate change? I
don't think we can affect it that much, Don. And if you read
Right.
some of the stuff, Krakatoa did more damage to the climate
Yeah.
than all the Model T Fords in the world.
Yeah,
You know?
one volcano goes off, and you got.
Oh, that's right.
You
Yeah.
got more pollution in the world than you've created all year with human beings. So
Well, when I was in engineering school in Arizona, and that started in '85, so that dates me quite a bit.
1885.
But I remember, 1885, that's right. But, I took a power plant technology class,
Yeah.
and we went over all the different kinds. But, and basically they were saying that we're going to run out of oil, by the year 2000, 2002.
Right.
And, we're way past that. And guess what? We discovered different ways to get oil.
Right.
And so, and also, by the way, many of the scientists now are saying, the fossil fuel, it is not a fossil fuel, it is somehow the earth creates this oil. And so just look up at some of the new research. It's interesting to see.
They said that one of the I'm trying to think about who it was. I read this story the other day about that, who created that description, fossil fuel. It was one of the rich guys in the 1900s. And he did it because it made it sound more scarce.
Right,
They
right,
made it more valuable by calling it a fossil fuel.
right.
But yeah, you're right. It's not a fossil fuel. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's ridiculous. But a lot of people don't know that, Don.
Right.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
because,
I know. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Just like they're ignorant about fracking and
exactly.
that process, and how brilliant that process is, and what they do to get natural gas and oil, right? So
Yes.
yeah, it's amazing. So yeah.
Well,
Anything?
so
Go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Don. Well, I was just saying, my brother's a big wig at a very large oil and gas company, and the problem is he says they do very well under the Democrats because the price of oil goes up so much because they restrict it. So you have a high price, but it's harder exploring.
Yeah.
So when the Republicans get in, they let them explore and get the drilling and all that. So they expand their business, and then they get more, money for it when the Democrats come in.
Yeah.
But somehow we've got to get a policy that's sustainable and longer term. And, obviously the big, not that we meant to get on climate change, but the big catch-all here is when you have the climate activists want to shut down, oil and gas, and I'll go to electric, and you talk about nuclear, and they don't want that. And it shows another ignorant, expose, because they don't want to talk about it because it's one of the best solutions now that we would have. And these little micro nuclear reactors,
Right.
and different things that could be happening on a grand scale, that if they were really concerned about that and not power and government control, we could handle it. But it's more about power and control. And
Yeah, I think that's one of the things Trump is interested in is the little micro nuclear power plants.
I did not even know that. Huh.
Yeah, he's talked about that at some of his rallies before. Because he's seen it over in Europe, I guess
Right.
they have several in France and other places in Europe. So anyway, that's and that nuclear is kind of keeping the European countries alive right now, because it's not oil and natural gas, especially natural gas. So well, good. So anything else about the debate that we want to talk about? I mean, I just looked at the debate when I watched it, and I look at it, and I always look at it. I mean, it's just my viewpoint. Is that person, do I want that person to be president of the United States if something happens, right?
Right.
And when I look at Walz, he is over his head. I mean, he's really over his head.
Look, to be honest, though,
I mean,
Don,
Kamala was over her head, but he is really over his head.
Well, but my expectations from Walz were so low.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
saying, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
That his, for me, he went up. He did. Okay.
He went
Now, in my mind, he did, because I had such low expectations. Now, when you're going from a 5% to 10, that's a double. It's still not very high. And from the side, it was so funny because I really thought he looked like Don Rickles from the side when he was looking at
people
this.
talked about that. Yeah. Don
Oh,
Rickles.
did they?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
People talk
Okay.
about Don Rickles. They've talked about most of them call him Elmer Fudd, but
Yeah.
and there's
Well,
pictures.
look,
Yeah.
but Vance did play nice because they didn't bring up his military service, his
Yeah.
retiring. And the one time that he really did stumble is when he said he was in Hong Kong during Tiananmen
Oh, yeah.
Square, and he didn't know what to say, and it was
I just
look.
misspoke, right? I'm a knucklehead.
yeah.
No,
I
actually,
mean,
I was in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square, and I didn't see him.
yeah, and you. Good for
And we
you,
were supposed to be
Paul.
flying into Beijing. I was on a program with my employer, and we had just finished up something in Singapore, and we were supposed to fly into Beijing to work on another program. And the company said, no, we got to Hong Kong, and he said, just don't go. And so we didn't go, and we were told that all the flights were going to be full. We wouldn't be able to get out of there for 2 weeks. And so I wrote my buddies from Thunderbird and said, trapped on the expense account in Hong Kong, pray for me.
Wow, Paul, I didn't know you were over there then. That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that
I went
is.
home. I went home and got in my airplane. And this happened.
And that's when the British owned Hong Kong, right?
Oh yeah, that was before they turned it over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting place.
Yeah.
So I guess I was saying, look, Walz did go up in my view because I really didn't think much of him, but I think Vance could have really slammed him if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But I think he was and I think intentionally
Yeah, I agree.
he didn't
Yeah.
to try to be, and he came off as a very reasonable, non-weird, somebody that could run the country tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, and he did a good job of reminding everybody that Kamala Harris has been vice president for 3.5 years.
He did.
And he did a good job of defending his president, his
Right.
running mate. So I think that's the two things they want to do. They want to keep tying everybody and reminding everybody that she's not starting over. She's been here for 3.5 years, and she's helped Biden destroy what they've done, or do what they've done. So yeah.
Yes, he definitely did that.
Yeah. And a lot of the people we have friends here from Minnesota that knew all about Walz, but they did not know that he'd been to China 30 times. And they said that wasn't something that people in Minnesota knew either when they voted for him he was a representative, and they voted for him for governor twice. So they didn't know anything about that. So that's all new info, and they might have thought things over a little bit if they'd known it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, the last comment I'll have on the debate, and I could go the whole time just on the debate.
And we can stay on as long as you want.
Well, I just think at some point, he did thread the needle because it's a huge topic. To me, it is the slavery issue of our day. And you don't have to say that in the debate because people will come up in arms in this. But what I mean by this is in the slavery era, if you look at a lot of the debates, even at the Constitutional Convention, it was really discussed, are we going to admit slaves are property? And at the Constitutional Convention, what is really great about our founding documents is even the slaveholders agreed to the fact that in the Constitution, it does not recognize slavery as property, as slaves as property. They, in the Constitution, persons who are, this, that, or the other, but they were very careful. And that is not by chance. I mean, you read the debates that Madison wrote, and it is clearly, they were like, we can't write it like that because in this Constitution, we are not going to sanction property in slaves as property. You can keep it in your state, but we are not going to say that we agree with property in slaves. And the same way you could frame the question about, about unborn babies. Are unborn babies property of the mother, or are they people? And I believe we have to reframe how we argue that. It's not to do with your property. It is another person. And I think if we do that, I think we will be able to change perspectives, at least with some people, that they'll look at it differently, because it's not all about the mother. There is another living human being inside the womb. And that didn't come up at all last night.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he wanted to go there, and I think he didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
But at some point, we on the more conservative side and pro-life side seem to be almost apologetic of our stance and backing on our heels because it's perceived to be not a very popular stance. But I think we have to not be apologetic and somehow do it in a way that we are not attacking the sinner, but attack the sin of, look, you can spin it any way you want. And, but it is a baby. And if you want that legal in some states, then that is your prerogative because we believe in federalism. But let's not mince words, just as slavery is slavery, and slaves were people, the same, but we chose to enslave them in certain states. Babies are people too, and you can choose to have the abortion where it's legal, but don't deny that it's a person.
One of the things, Jeff, that you just kind of said that twisted my head a bit was I think we have to keep in mind that Trump put in place the death of Roe versus Wade by getting the conservative justices. He doesn't want abortion to be a part of any discussions of the federal government. It's not a federal government.
Right. And I agree with him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I agree with him.
I don't think Vance wanted to walk into that minefield, because that would have put abortion into the presidential arm.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Paul. That's a good point. So before you really even get in, so maybe my argument's more on the state level, and Vance could have then, I think, better have explained. The abortion thing is the thing I think he left doors open on. That's why I'm talking about that most.
Yeah.
That I, even though I am extremely pro-life, it just like I'm extremely anti-slavery, I'm also very pro-federalism, where the federal government is delegated powers given to it in the Constitution, and that's it. And abortion isn't mentioned in there, so I'm not for Roe versus Wade mandating it be legal. But I also don't think the federal government has the delegated authority to make it illegal. Now, the arguments that go against my argument are in the 14th Amendment, where you have a due process and, equality under the law. And so there is an argument that the federal government does have those powers. And I'm cognizant of that. But, it's kind of like, for me, if you're going to err on the side of liberty and freedom, and if you're going to err as far as the powers delegated to the federal government, err on the side of, back to the states, because I think that's how we create peace in our country. If we try to force feed everybody, hey, you've got to do this, I just don't think coercion works. You look back to the abolition days of alcohol, right? You look back even to what happened with the abolitionists in slavery and the kickback that happened in the South of, we're going to coerce you to do this rather than teach correct principles and let people govern themselves better. So that it's an argument, when is something bad enough that you do coerce other people? Well, murder's one.
Yeah, murder's one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Jeff, did you have you seen the movie Lincoln with Daniel?
Yes.
What's his name? Daniel J. No, I can't think of the actor's name. Anyway.
Yeah, but it was about the 13th Amendment.
Right. Did you like that movie?
I did.
Yeah, I thought the the part in Congress, that part of it was just wonderful, right? The way they put that. I thought they did a really good job of setting the stage and you being there, hearing them make their arguments. That was terrific. Yeah. No,
and I think it's fairly, it's still a little historical fiction, but it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
As far as the way they had to twist arms and everything to get that done.
Yeah.
And it really humanizes Lincoln of, he had to get down in the dirt sometimes to he wasn't above the fray.
Yeah.
He was willing to do his part.
Yeah, and, exactly. And he was, he was on the right side of the argument, right?
Well, you can't argue against slavery.
Yeah.
The big question is, look, we could do hours on the Civil War, but certainly slavery is evil, just like abortion.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I bring up is which is worse? Which is worse? And that's because we were, I don't want to get politically correct, but you can just see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
We were willing to do pretty bad things to end slavery.
Yeah.
But remember, the Civil War, even though that was the instigation, the expansion of slavery of the war, the primary goal for Lincoln was to save the Union, not to end slavery, at least in the states where it existed.
Right.
He definitely did not want it extended to the territories, however. But we were willing to kill our fellow man over staying in the Union and slavery.
Mhm.
And so we have to be very careful about, where this takes us all. Because the big question I've always had that maybe we could debate sometime, when one person discovers a moral truth or what they think to be a moral truth, when do they have the right, duty, obligation, or power to coerce another person into that same way of thinking, belief, or action? Okay, so we saw that in, alcohol, we saw that in different things, and we know the result of that in some cases is not good and in other cases good. But I think it's a question we need to think about.
Yeah, I guess that applies to, that's kind of the question about drugs now, right?
Well,
And
drugs now,
legalizing marijuana.
yeah, legalizing marijuana, or even climate change. Look, we've got to think on our side what we want to coerce the other side to do.
Yeah.
Which is no abortion, which is, you just go down the list. But then what do they think is right? That is absolutely wrong. Like, taking away your liberties, during COVID because they thought it was dangerous. It's like, if I want to go out and risk myself, you stay home.
Yeah.
If you want to stay home
Right.
and safe. But why are you telling me I have to?
Yeah.
Why are you telling me I have to shut my business down?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If people want to risk it out there, and of course, we were right. The point is, we never want to go back, and certainly the left doesn't, and many on the right don't either, Don and Paul, because most of the people on the right were also wrong
Yeah.
on this issue.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody wants to talk about it anymore because it's like, oh, we had no choice. No, we had a choice.
Yeah.
And we're not learning from that because we haven't had a national discussion. Have we had a national discussion on what we did?
Of course not. No.
We have. Paul, have you heard of? I mean, I haven't.
No, I haven't heard of one, but stuff I'm reading says we may get a chance to do it again here before the election.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't learned from that experience. The governors haven't done anything. The state legislatures have done very little.
We've
The
got a proposition
executive.
right now, Jeff, coming up
Yeah.
here. Is only
Oh
to
yeah.
limit the governor's emergency powers to 30 days. That's a step in the right direction.
That is a big step in the right
So
direction.
that's something to look at. But what we don't know, and you're right, we haven't had that national discussion, but I think that discussion has spread. I know through what I read and study, it's spread, and there's a lot of people. I'm flying a flag right now in front of my house that says I will not comply. Just wait for it to show up. But there are a lot of people who played along with masks and jobs and all that kind of stuff last time based on the fear. I mean, they promised us we were all going to die if we didn't follow, what Fauci said. Yeah. And fear is a very strong emotion. I mean, a very strong emotion. And so we were under this. I don't know whether to call it a lie or not. I don't know how much they knew and didn't know about this stuff. People did die, most of them, when they went to the hospital and put on respirators at one point. But we got this national discussion underground, if you will. It says, hell no, I'm not going to comply next time. I'm going to keep my business open and I'll do whatever it takes to do that. Or I'm not going to wear a mask or whatever it is. So there's a lot of people who've been awakened since the end of COVID and don't have that.
Oh, I hope that's true. I hope that's true, Paul, but I have a hard time believing it for the following reasons. And first of all, let me back up. I mean, if you own a store and you want to mandate somebody wearing a mask, as far as I'm concerned, that's your prerogative as a store owner. And, if you don't want to go in there, that's fine. And if I could choose to go somewhere else, I wouldn't go into that store. But the point I'm making is, and fear is something very strong, but within 3 months, we knew the risks. Okay. We knew by the time June of 2020 came rolling around, we knew it wasn't killing kids. We knew it. Okay. We knew who the vulnerable populations were.
Right.
And the point is, our politicians at all levels were more interested in being right, in making, than they were in being right. They didn't want to go back and say, hey, we had to do this and we had to shut down the schools. It's not killing our kids, so we're going to bring them back. Instead, they doubled down on stupid.
Yeah.
And they were more concerned about admitting they were wrong. And that's why I ran for school board, okay? And thinking that the public would wake up, but the teachers unions hated me so much, they pulled out all the stops.
Yeah.
But it's incredible that people are more interested in power, authority, and in not admitting they were wrong or making course corrections than saying, hey, we were wrong. Let's think about the kids. Yeah. And my argument there was, we all say we go in front of buses for our kids. Oh my gosh, we are liars. We won't even go to the board meetings of the school and stick up for our kids, let alone stand in front of a bus.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it truly disgusts me.
Yeah.
And so do I think a lot of people have woken up, but enough, Paul? I don't know.
We'll see, because I have a feeling we're going to get an opportunity to test ourselves.
Yeah, well, you may be right.
Yeah, there's even talk about a flu emergency. I've heard that scuttlebutt. The flu is going to get so bad that they're going to have to do something or declare an emergency or whatever.
You just reminded me, Don, of that story about the time Khrushchev came to the United States, toured it, went back to Russia, and somebody said, Comrade Khrushchev, how are things going in the United States? He said, oh, it's terrible. He said, they are in such trouble over there that 1 out of every 3 cars on the highway was being pushed by a boat. You have to ponder that for a little bit. But what I'm saying here is that politicians, our Constitution was written for exactly that point, Jeff. It was trying to take the human nature out of human people and create a rule of law rather than rule of man. And so that's what I see there. If you're talking about the politicians not wanting to admit they're wrong, they want that job. They want that job for the perks, not necessarily to take care of the people. I can't remember if I said it to you, Jeff. You said something during one of the talks I went to the other day about our leaders in Washington, and I think it might have been you. I can't remember. Somebody said that, and I said, as long as we're calling them leaders, they're going to think they're leaders. If we start telling them they're servants, maybe they'll start thinking like servants and listening to the constituents instead of feeding, for their own end. Is that word? That's not it. Anyway.
And Paul, I don't have a problem with that, but you know what? We send them there, and so it is ignorance on the populace. Again, we went from the colonial to the American mindset at the founding. And my argument is we've gone from the American back to the colonial mindset. We've gone from having a priority of liberty and opportunities and risks it brings to no, I'd rather have safety, security, comfort, convenience, and lifestyle. Just go back and look at Patrick Henry's talk at the Virginia debates, when we were debating whether to help out our brothers in Massachusetts. St. John's Church, March of 1775. Patrick Henry was the last speaker, and that's when he gave his liberty or death speech. But everybody that went before him, almost everybody, was like, look, it is not practical that we go and help Massachusetts. We don't have the guns. We don't have the organization. We don't have the money. We don't have the leaders. We don't have anything. So even if we wanted to, we can't do it. But Patrick Henry's speech shifted almost 100% of that thought process. And Jefferson was there, Washington was there, you know, Randolph's were there, the governor of Virginia was there, and almost without an exception, everybody said that was the greatest speech they'd ever heard, because it shifted everybody's perspective on what their priorities should be. And then that stuck. I really think that was the birth of our nation, not 1619. It was that moment where the largest state decided, look, we are going to stand on principle no matter what the cost. And they subordinated their fear to doing what was right. And we do not have that courage today, nor the understanding of what made our country great. So when we say make America great again, you know, that's fine economically, but it's got to start with the education of the people. And it's got to start with what made us great in the first place. And it's all found in the Declaration of Independence. And do we still believe? Yeah. You know, and not just do we believe, do we have the courage to act on our convictions of that belief? And again, that's why I say COVID was such a great test, because the answer with an exclamation point is no. As a nation, we do not. And I was hoping even one state, one governor, one state legislative body would have the gumption to stand up. Yeah. And we didn't.
South Dakota came close.
You know, did a pretty good job.
Yeah, they did. They did decent, but it's pretty good in my mind is still an F.
In comparison to the rest of them, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry to be so adamant about it, but
No, I get it. I mean, you would have thought that I kind of look at the churches and the way they reacted.
Oh. F minus.
Yeah, I know, and it was very disappointing. And if the pastors in this country would have stood up and said, "Hey, we aren't going to close off and shut people out of worshiping their God," and
but Don, even if they did it for 2 or 3 months, I mean, that's okay. There are emergency powers.
Right.
And even if they said, look, the state has some say here.
Yeah.
But to live the lie,
yeah,
and to wink and to say, oh, yes, it's so dangerous, everybody, instead of saying, why don't you give us the choice?
Yeah.
Those who want to come can come. Those who want to stay can stay.
Yeah. And that's where they, like Paul said, they played on everybody's fear, right?
Yeah, but where was the church?
That's legal coercion. I just came from a meeting right over there at that computer of the American Black Robe Regiment. Are y'all familiar with the American Black Robe Regiment?
Yeah.
I am not. I'm not.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Black Robe Regiment at all?
Yeah. I'm not. No.
Okay. Well, this was a name given to the pastors and preachers in the colonies by the British, because they were talking up liberty and freedom and the revolution, basically. And everybody in England said, we're not only going to fight the colonists, but we're going to have to fight the Black Robe Regiment, because they are the ones that are stirring the pot and all that kind of stuff. And the American Black Robe Regiment is a group of pastors across the country that are trying to put the word out to their congregations about the egregious overreach and tyranny of our government today. And it's
is this something reformed recently or not?
I don't know quite how old it is. I just joined about a month ago, and so I'm still learning about it. But I heard of the Black Robe Regiment years ago,
we need a resurgent. I wish they would have been a little more vocal about 4 years ago.
Yeah, I just got an email that they've hooked up with the constitutional sheriffs.
Yeah, Richard Mack was on the program today.
Yeah.
So, and he's a big states' rights. Actually, he's a county rights kind of guy, to get right down to it.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point I guess that I'm not making, that I'm trying to make right now, is that there is a growing movement of independence and freedom that's swelling into the country. It's swelling slowly because, like you said, it's so much easier for people to let the government do things. And only when they step on your toes, on my toes, do I worry about my rights. But when they step on your toes, I'm less inclined to pick up my gun and go shoot somebody.
Yeah.
Because it affects me personally. I'm happy to sit, in my little cocoon where nothing hurts, nothing gets into me and hurts me. But but our cocoons are being crumbled and eroded, and so pretty soon we're going to have to do something.
So Jeff, the Black Robe, America's Black Robe Regiment has a Rumble channel.
Oh.
If you want to check it out, and that's what it's called, America's Black Robe Regiment.
Yeah, no, I will check it out. Yeah. Listen, my feeling is better late than never. And, and this is something I'm very passionate about this because it breaks my heart to see what sacrifices our founders made and everybody has made through the Civil War era and, our whole existence as the United States. And we just seem to just throw it away, like the ancient Israelites wanting a king, because it's easier for them today.
Yeah. Well,
right.
You'll like this. One of their speakers, and he's on YouTube, is he's Patrick Henry Jolly. He's the 5th great grandson of Patrick Henry.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. So he's on one of their Rumble things. You want to check that out. Catherine Engelbricht's been on there, and I'm trying to think of the guy, the pastor that. It's Bill Cook, founder and CEO of America's Black Robe Regiment. Bill Cook, C-O-O-K. I get all their emails.
That's great.
I get all their emails, and I try to follow them as much as I can.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm glad. We need the movements like this, but it really starts with education. It starts with getting our priorities in order, really thinking about what those priorities are. Because if we haven't thought about it, we're just going with the current. If we don't have that founding, it's very difficult to make those hard decisions in trying times.
Well, it all goes back to, teaching the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in our schools, right? Yep. Teaching these kids where we came from.
And when you say, and Don, when you say teaching the Constitution, some people roll their eyes like, okay.
Oh yeah, I know.
But when you get into the details,
right? Yeah.
Really how did they decide? Yeah. What are the arguments in here? How did they decide 3/5 clause?
Yeah.
Who came up with that? What is the, when you get into the people and the arguments and how it was created, and tell the stories of why they did it and how they did it, it can really come alive.
Oh yeah. And and the genius behind it. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I'm teaching this biblical citizenship class right now. Are you familiar with the biblical citizenship class?
I know you.
Because of you, Paul. Yes.
Okay. Well, tomorrow's I finished the series at the Evangelical Free Church here, and what I wanted to say is that I told the students there, like students, they're all my age, kind of old people, but I said, next week, this was 2 weeks ago, I said, I'm going to have to do something that was harder than flying a helicopter into a hot LZ. I've got to go teach the Constitution to
That is, Paul. That is.
So I went and taught two different classes of 5th graders at Copperview Elementary in Sarita. So, but
Paul, that is funny when you say that. I went and presented with a retired SEAL Team 6 sniper, to a group. And he was so nervous before the thing. He was like, man, I'd rather be running into a hail of bullets than doing it. And public speaking can be very scary.
Oh, yeah.
to some people. It
Yeah.
really can.
Yeah.
Oh, my fear kind of went back to at a church camp many years ago. I was teaching the kids, 7th graders, and I thought I would start the program with a little humor. So I said, the teacher called the class to order and started getting everybody's name, and John and Tom and Mary and Ann and Francis and 6 and 7/8. And the teacher stopped and said, "Wait a minute, what's your name?" He said, 6 and 7/8. How'd you get that name? He said, "Well, my parents didn't know what to name me, so everybody put their choice of a name in the hat, and that's what they pulled out." Well, of course, these kids had never seen a hat with a hat size in it because everything they got was on fits all, and they just all stared at me. Talk about
awesome.
inappropriate start for your class. But
Yeah,
anyway.
that's funny.
That's good. Yeah. So listen, you guys, any updates on Carrie Lake? Have you heard anything? Is she?
I've heard some more hopeful banter this week
Oh, good.
on Carrie Lake.
What
Yeah,
is it?
I have. So it just might be in my circles, Don, but you do have some of the McCain type Republicans that are coming around, but we'll see if enough of them do. So my 10% might have just gone up to 20 from last week.
What I heard was that she's cut that six percentage point deficit in half, and she's 3% behind now.
I believe that. And I think it is moving quickly. And I think really as we get closer to the election and things are spinning out of control with the, with all the things going on, people going on strike and Iran shooting missiles, and they're just like, look, we got to, as they say, when you got a good Marine, go break them out of the brig, type thing. And it's like, you might have to hit that glass, and pull the lever.
Yeah, that's it.
She's been running some good anti-Gallego ads lately. I mean, really hammered him on some of the things that he's done.
Well, that's what she needs to do. You got to define them before they define you. And
she was a little slow out of the blocks on that one, I think.
yeah, and
She was trying to play fair.
if she sticks to the border and the economy, the price of things, the high price of things, that's all she should talk about. I wouldn't talk about anything else. So
Yeah.
that's good, though. That's good to hear. And so, how did your heirs meeting go with the propositions, Jeff?
That's tonight, Don.
Oh, it's tonight. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right. Well, you can give us a report next week.
I will. Yes.
And
yeah.
Paul, how did your meeting go?
It went well. I've got a cheat sheet now that I'm going to take to my biblical citizenship class tomorrow to pass out to the students to show them what our group, and I say our group, it's the FEMA GOP, felt about each of the propositions. And I didn't get into the language of the propositions per se, but they've got a slideshow for those propositions, and I'm trying to find out who I need to contact to get a copy of that slideshow to present to them to do that. But they went over all the propositions and gave us a rundown on why you should or shouldn't vote for this proposition. And there were two of them. Basically, the two abortion propositions are just open-ended. You can call a cab driver to come give you an abortion, that kind of stuff. And then the other one that they said was a soft no was something to do with taxes and tips, minimum wage, some kind of formula that if you're a tip worker and you got to get paid X dollars, but if you do this, you get $3 back from the. I don't know. Anyway, they said if you want to vote for it, vote for it. If you get something worse for tips, it's probably a good thing for them, but it's not really a good thing for the economy. That kind of a deal.
Yeah. Well, Trump wants to take away taxes on tips, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also taxes on Social Security.
And overtime.
And overtime. Yeah, overtime too. So,
that's a biggie, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, half the cops that I know work almost more hours overtime or get paid more for their overtime than they do for their regular shifts.
Well, yeah, and when I was working hourly as a test technician in Salt Lake City, your first 8 hours, you lost about half of that to taxes, overtime hours.
Yeah.
And then your second 8 hours, you lost 3/4 of it to taxes. So, I mean, you got extra money, but
I worked for a company
it
while I
added
was
up
going through
quick.
college. I worked for a company that, while I was in college, that had a sliding scale. Once you did your 40 hours, I think at that time I was making $1.25 an hour. But for the 41st hour, I got $1.20, and for the next one, I got $1.15, and for the next hour, I got $1.10. And every hour I worked, I got less money. And somehow they were able to justify it legally. I don't know how they did that, but anyway.
Well, that's one of the things I really loved about Raytheon was they paid me. They said, we will pay you enough that and I worked as much as I had to. They were paying me so well that I couldn't, I couldn't say no, right?
Right.
Just
So if I had to work extra hours, I didn't even think
You did
about
it. Right. You just did it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we got this big we got the big port strike going on now here on the East Coast. It's really affecting Miami and the Everglades. We have a big port in the Everglades. I don't know if you guys knew that or not.
No, I didn't.
And then there's a big one in Miami too. And what they're arguing for is not only higher wages, but they do not want any automation. These shipping companies are going to try to automate these ports. And these guys want to keep their jobs, and they don't want that automation. Automation's big overseas, I guess, in some of the newer ports overseas. But
Oh, wow.
that's what they're fighting for. They're fighting against automation. So, I
It's
don't know.
It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, if you will. We'll go on strike, and if you don't get automation, but if you get automation, we don't have to come back from the strike.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. One of the things I'll tell everybody is, in regards to Hurricane Helene, is if you want to donate money, give it to Samaritan's Purse. Okay. They are the ones that are doing the most in all these states, along with, and I don't know if you guys knew it or not, our Governor DeSantis, he's having the National Guard fly Chinook helicopters up to North Carolina and Tennessee to get people in Florida back to Florida, because there's a lot of Florida people, snowbirds that live up there that may not have come back to Florida yet. And he's also taken in supplies with these helicopters, on their way up. So he says if FEMA, if the government wants to do something, they need to. He says go to North Carolina and Tennessee. He says we don't need you down here in Florida. We got things handled down here. So yeah,
he is an amazing governor.
He really is. Yeah, he has a press conference every day in a different part of the state that got hit by the hurricane. And this was pretty bad. This was the Category 4, and the storm surge was 15 to 20 feet along
That's just amazing.
that west coast. So it was bad. So well, thanks guys for your participation tonight.
Always good. Good
Yeah.
to see you all.
You can't
I
do
guess
this without
Paul will be with us next week. You'll be with us next week, Jeff. I don't know what happened to
I
Bobby.
will.
And then in 2 weeks, Paul's going to go to his Special Forces convention in Las Vegas, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's fun. Well, in 2 weeks, I'm out with the Navy myself.
Oh, are you going back to
I am.
Virginia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll find somebody to interview that night.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
2 weeks,
so,
I'm probably going to be hard to catch. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But next week, I'm here.
Next week we're good. So all right, good.
Yeah.
I have. You guys have any books you'd like to recommend to the audience?
Oh, I got a ton of books. If I turned my camera, you'd see my office is
Okay.
just
Well, I'm going to
packed.
recommend. This is a fiction book. I'm going to recommend it to everybody. Can you guys see that?
Tom Clancy. Yeah. It's hard to see though. Yeah, there you go. Pull it back to you.
Yeah. And that's Flash.
Oh, Flashpoint. Tom Clancy, Flashpoint.
One of his new books, and it's got a lot about China, which is very, very good. And I'm trying to think of the guy's now. I can't even remember the guy's name in it. Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan is the president in this book. and his son is the guy out doing all the dirty work. So it's pretty interesting. So I wonder if
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll make a movie about it. It's pretty good.
I'm sure he's a great writer.
Yeah,
I'm
he really
telling
is. Yeah, he holds on to you. So.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, guys, well, you take care of yourselves.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
God bless you.
Always a
Thanks for
pleasure.
joining. We will
We're
see you all next week. Subscribe and like. And from 4 Men in America, good night.